Christina Wheeler's fingers trembled as she fumbled with the stack of math quizzes. The school hallway was eerily quiet, most teachers having left hours ago. She had promised herself she would grade all 30 papers before heading home, but a pounding headache forced her to reconsider. Sighing, she tucked the remaining quizzes into her leather tote bag, the one splurge she had allowed herself last Christmas, and massaged her temples. Perhaps Adam would understand if dinner wasn't ready when he got home. Perhaps. The thought of her husband made her stomach tighten. Lately, his critiques had grown more frequent, his dismissals of her career more pointed. "Teaching elementary school is noble, Chris," he'd say with that smile that never quite reached his eyes. "But there's a ceiling to it, you know." She'd learned to laugh it off, to redirect the conversation to his latest case or the partners he was impressing at the firm. It was easier that way. Christina gathered her things and bid goodbye to Marge, the elderly custodian who gave her a sympathetic smile. "Heading home early today, Mrs. Wheeler?" "Not like you." "Migraine," Christina explained, tapping her temple. "Sometimes the body makes decisions for you." The drive home took 15 minutes less than usual, a small mercy on a day when every traffic light felt like a personal assault on her senses. Their house, a 2-story colonial that Adam had insisted they needed in the right neighborhood, looked particularly imposing today. Christina pulled into the driveway, surprised to see Adam's black Audi already parked there. He rarely came home before 7. Even more surprising were the 2 additional cars, a silver BMW she didn't recognize, and a blue Lexus she vaguely remembered from one of Adam's office parties. Her heartbeat quickened. Had she forgotten some dinner party they were hosting? No, Adam would have texted incessantly to remind her. He prided himself on entertaining colleagues properly. Christina took a moment to check her appearance in the rearview mirror. Her long, dark hair was still neatly swept to one side, though a few strands had escaped during the day. The emerald blouse she wore, one of Adam's approved work clothes, still looked presentable. She reapplied her lipstick out of habit, a ritual of armor-donning she'd developed over years of Adam's subtle criticisms about keeping up appearances. The walk from the driveway to the front door felt longer than usual, her teacher's sensible heels clicking softly against the concrete path lined with the hydrangeas she'd planted last spring. Adam had called them suburban cliché, but had relented when she pointed out that the neighbors, whose opinions he valued highly, had complimented them. As Christina approached the door, she could hear the unmistakable sound of male laughter from inside. The mixture of voices confirmed her suspicions. Adam had brought colleagues home. She reached for her keys, prepared to enter with an apologetic smile for her unexpected early arrival, when she heard her name. "So how's Christina these days?" asked an unfamiliar voice through the partially open window. Christina froze, key suspended mid-air. She shouldn't eavesdrop. It was petty and beneath her dignity. Yet something in the tone of the question, a false casualness, the kind that preceded gossip, rooted her to the spot. Adam's laugh had a sharp edge to it, one she'd grown accustomed to hearing when he spoke about her to others. "Oh, you know, same as always, teaching her 4th graders, planning cute little science projects, coming home exhausted from dealing with other people's kids all day." Christina felt her cheeks burn. The dismissiveness wasn't new, but hearing it laid bare for his colleagues stung in a way she hadn't expected. "You two been married, what, 7, 8 years now?" This voice was different, deeper, with a hint of a southern accent. 7 years, 3 months, and Adam paused dramatically. Approximately too many days to count. The men laughed, a chorus of expensive scotch and privilege. "Seriously, though," continued the southern voice, "you guys thinking about kids anytime soon? TikTok and all that, right?" There was a pause, and Christina found herself holding her breath. They'd had this conversation many times over the years. Adam always deflected with talk about establishing themselves first and waiting for the right time. She had stopped bringing it up 2 years ago, tired of the circular discussions. "Between us," Adam's voice dropped lower, forcing Christina to lean closer to the window. I don't see that happening with Christina. The words landed like a physical blow. Christina steadied herself against the brick exterior of the house. Man, you can't string her along forever, said the first voice. Either have kids with her, or let her find someone who will before she's too old. I can't believe you're still hanging on, said the southern voice. How much longer you planning to keep up this charade? Honestly? Adam's voice had that smooth, confident tone he used in courtrooms. I give it 6 months, Max. She's so far below where I am now. A 4th-grade teacher who can barely contribute to our household? Meanwhile, I'm closing in on partner. Christina's vision blurred, the pain in her head now secondary to the searing ache in her chest. Damn, Wheeler, that's cold, laughed one of the men, but there was no real judgment in his tone. Hey, I married young, Adam replied casually. We all make mistakes. And now that the Lawson merger's going through, I need someone who fits the lifestyle. Someone who understands the circles we move in. Someone like Jessica in corporate litigation? Asked the southern voice slyly. Adam's laugh was all the confirmation needed. Let's just say I've been exploring my options. But first things first, I need to extract myself from this marriage in a way that doesn't cost me half of everything I've built. Christina felt numb as she listened to the man she'd loved for nearly a decade discuss her as if she were a business liability to be managed. There had been distance between them, yes. Arguments that ended in cold silences. Weekends where they moved around each other like polite strangers. But this calculated betrayal was beyond anything she'd imagined. How are you going to do it? Asked one of the men, sounding genuinely curious. Already in motion, Adam replied, and Christina could picture him leaning back in that self-satisfied way of his. I've been moving assets around. Nothing too obvious, but enough that when it happens, I'll be protected. The key is to make her think it's her idea to leave. Classic Wheeler, laughed one of the voices. Always 3 steps ahead. Christina's shock was crystallizing into something else now. A cold, clear anger that steadied her shaking hands and dried her unshed tears. 7 years of her life. 7 years of trying to be the wife he wanted, of suppressing her own needs, of convincing herself that his ambition would eventually settle into something that made room for her dreams too. Without thinking, she slid the key into the lock and pushed the door open with more force than necessary. The heavy oak door swung wide, the hinges announcing her arrival with a betraying creak. The conversation in the living room cut off abruptly. 3 men in expensive suits turned toward her, drinks in hand, faces frozen in various expressions of surprise. Adam, standing by the fireplace, went pale, his carefully cultivated composure slipping for perhaps the first time in their marriage. Christina, he recovered quickly, his lawyer's instincts kicking in. I thought you'd be at school until 6. You remember Craig and Bennett from the firm? Christina barely registered the other men. Her focus was entirely on Adam, on the man who had just been plotting the end of their marriage while sharing drinks with his colleagues. She noticed details with an almost surreal clarity. The faint lipstick smudge on the collar of his crisp white shirt, the way his signet ring caught the light as he nervously adjusted his tie, the flash of calculation behind his initial shock. How long have you been standing there? Adam asked, his tone deceptively light, though Christina could see the tension in his jaw. Long enough, she replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. The headache that had driven her home early was now a distant concern, washed away by adrenaline and a strange sense of clarity. An uncomfortable silence descended over the room. Craig and Bennett exchanged glances, clearly wishing to be anywhere but witnessing this marital implosion. We should probably head out, Bennett muttered, placing his tumbler on the coffee table. Thanks for the drinks, Wheeler. No, Christina said, holding up her hand. Please stay. I wouldn't want to interrupt your business discussion. The word business carried all the weight of her understanding. Adam's expression hardened. Christina, you're clearly upset. We can talk about whatever you think you heard later. Actually, she replied, setting her bag down with deliberate calm, I don't think we need to talk about it later. I heard everything quite clearly just now. She turned to address his colleagues directly. Did you know that Adam keeps a separate calendar for events he doesn't want me to know about? It's synced to his work email, the one I don't have access to. Craig and Bennett looked desperately uncomfortable, but Christina wasn't finished. 6 months is actually generous, considering he's been emotionally checked out for at least 2 years. Though I suppose that timeline works well with the Lawson merger, doesn't it, Adam? The color drained further from Adam's face. You're making a scene, he hissed, glancing nervously at his colleagues. Am I? Christina replied, a strange calm settling over her. I'm simply joining the conversation about my marriage, the one you were having without me. She walked across the room and picked up Adam's half-empty tumbler of scotch from the mantelpiece. The amber liquid caught the late afternoon light streaming through the windows. 7 years reduced to a strategic exit plan and asset redistribution. To your successful extraction, she said, raising the glass in a mock toast before downing the remaining scotch in one burning swallow. The unfamiliar alcohol scorched her throat, but she didn't flinch. Craig and Bennett were now actively collecting their belongings, mumbling awkward excuses about early meetings the next day. I'll see you guys tomorrow, Adam said tightly, not taking his eyes off Christina. The front door closed behind his fleeing colleagues, leaving husband and wife in a silence that felt both apocalyptic and strangely inevitable. You weren't supposed to hear that, Adam finally said, and Christina almost laughed at the absurdity of his statement. Clearly, she replied. But I did. And now we don't need to pretend anymore, do we? Adam's expression shifted, his lawyer's instincts taking over as he assessed and recalculated. Chris, you're overreacting. We were just talking. About how I'm beneath you? About your plans to leave me in 6 months? About Jessica from corporate litigation? Christina's voice finally cracked on the last question, betraying the emotions she was fighting to control. Adam had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but it passed quickly. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The firm expects certain things. Stop, Christina cut him off. Just stop. I've spent years listening to explanations about what the firm expects, about the image we need to project, about why my career wasn't important enough to relocate for. I'm done. She moved past him toward the stairs, her mind already racing ahead to what she needed to pack, where she could go. Adam caught her arm as she passed. Where do you think you're going? He demanded, his composure fully shattered now. Christina looked down at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. This familiar stranger she had shared a bed with for 7 years. I'm not waiting 6 months for you to extract yourself from our marriage. I'm leaving now. You can't just leave, he said, but his grip loosened slightly. We need to discuss this, like adults. Figure out next steps. Next steps? Christina echoed incredulously. You've already figured them out, Adam. Assets moved, extraction planned, replacement lined up. I'm just accelerating your timeline. She pulled away from him and continued up the stairs to their bedroom. The room that had once been their sanctuary now felt like a stage set, impeccably decorated, but ultimately hollow. Christina pulled her suitcase from the closet and began filling it methodically with essentials. Clothes, toiletries, the framed photo of her parents, the first edition Austin that Brianna had given her for her 30th birthday. Adam appeared in the doorway, watching her pack with a mixture of disbelief and calculation. You're being impulsive, he said. Where will you even go? Brianna's, Christina answered without hesitation. Her friend had offered a spare room during their brief separation 2 years ago. The one Adam had convinced her was just a bump in the road of their marriage. For how long? He pressed, his tone suggesting the inconvenience of it all. Christina stopped her packing and looked directly at him. Does it matter? You want it out. I'm giving you what you want. As she resumed her methodical packing, a strange calm descended over her. This was happening. She was leaving the carefully constructed facade of her marriage, stepping away from the life she'd compromised herself to fit into. The realization should have terrified her, but instead, Beneath the hurt and anger, she felt something unexpected. Relief. Adam remained in the doorway, his expression cycling through shock, anger, and finally settling into something more calculating. "You know, leaving like this puts you at a disadvantage legally," he said, the attorney in him emerging. "Abandonment of the marital home can be used against you." Christina almost laughed. Even now, he was strategizing, thinking of angles and advantages. "I heard your planning session downstairs, counselor. I think we're well past worrying about legal niceties." She zipped up her suitcase and grabbed her laptop bag. There would be more to collect later, but for now, this would be enough. As she moved toward the door, Adam finally stepped aside, seeming to realize that his usual tactics of persuasion and intimidation weren't working. "This is a mistake, Christina," he said, following her down the stairs. "You're throwing away 7 years on an overheard conversation. We can work through this." Christina reached the bottom of the stairs and turned to face him one last time. In the fading afternoon light, he looked smaller somehow, less imposing than the man whose approval she had sought for so long. "No, Adam," she said quietly. "The mistake was staying with someone who saw me as a stepping stone rather than a partner. The mistake was believing you when you said we were a team." She walked to the front door, suitcase in hand, aware of Adam trailing behind her like a bewildered child, rather than the self-assured attorney who had been plotting her disposal minutes earlier. "You'll regret this," he called after her as she stepped onto the porch. "When you calm down and think about what you're giving up." Christina turned, cutting him off with a raised hand. "What am I giving up exactly? A husband who discusses discarding me with his colleagues? A marriage that's apparently 6 months from expiration? A home that never felt like mine?" She shook her head. "I deserve better than being someone's mistake, Adam." Without waiting for his response, she walked to her car, loaded her suitcase into the trunk, and slid into the driver's seat. Through the windshield, she could see Adam standing in the doorway of their house. No, his house now, watching her with an expression that mingled disbelief with the dawning realization that his carefully laid plans had just collapsed. Christina started the engine and pulled out of the driveway, not allowing herself to look back. As she drove away from the life she had spent years trying to fit into, the late afternoon sun warm on her face through the car window, she felt the first tears finally fall. They weren't tears of despair, though, or even primarily of hurt. They were tears of release, of a pressure valve finally giving way after years of building tension. She was leaving. And somehow, despite the pain and uncertainty ahead, it felt like the first honest thing she had done in years. The first night at Brianna's apartment was a blur of tears and disjointed explanations. Christina sat curled on her friend's oversized couch, a mug of chamomile tea growing cold between her trembling hands as she recounted the afternoon's events. "He actually said you were beneath him?" Brianna's normally cheerful face was flushed with indignation. "After 7 years of marriage?" Christina nodded, wiping away a stray tear. "And apparently Jessica from corporate litigation is more his speed now." "Jessica Miller? That bottle blonde who was hanging all over him at the firm's holiday party?" Brianna shook her head in disgust. "She's been gunning for a ring from any partner track lawyer for years." The mention of the holiday party brought back an unwelcome memory. Adam's hand lingering too long on Jessica's lower back, the whispered conversation that abruptly ended when Christina approached. She had dismissed it then, chalking it up to work discussions and her own insecurity. Now the moment replayed with painful clarity. "I should have seen it coming," Christina murmured, staring into her tea. "There were so many signs." "Don't you dare blame yourself," Brianna said firmly, taking the cold tea from Christina's hands and replacing it with a glass of wine. "Adam Wheeler is the villain in this story, not you. He's the one who made vows and broke them." Christina took a sip of wine, the rich Cabernet warming her from the inside. "He's been planning this, Brie, moving assets around, calculating the best time to leave me, like I'm some business transaction to be terminated. That's because he's a soulless corporate lawyer who who views everything as a transaction, Brianna replied, tucking a throw blanket around Christina's shoulders. But that's his flaw, not yours. See? Despite Brianna's comforting words, Christina couldn't help replaying Adam's voice in her head. She's so far below where I am now. Had she really become so small in his eyes? Or had she always been a temporary arrangement, a starter wife to be upgraded when he reached a certain professional threshold? Her phone buzzed for the 12th time that evening. Adam again. The earlier messages had ranged from angry, "You're being completely irrational," to manipulative, "We need to talk this through before you make a mistake you'll regret." She silenced the device without reading the latest attempt. "You don't have to talk to him tonight," Brianna assured her. "Or tomorrow. Or the next day. Take whatever time you need." Christina nodded gratefully, though a tiny part of her, the part still programmed to respond to Adam's needs and moods, felt a twinge of anxiety at ignoring his messages. 7 years of carefully managing his expectations had left their mark. That night, lying in Brianna's guest bedroom under unfamiliar sheets, Christina stared at the ceiling fan slowly rotating above her. Her life had been upended in the span of a few hours, yet the world continued turning. Tomorrow, she would still have to face her classroom of 4th graders. Bills would still need paying. Life would demand her participation despite her personal earthquake. Her phone lit up in the darkness. Another message from Adam. Despite her better judgment, she reached for it. "I know you're upset, but running away isn't the answer. Come home so we can discuss this like adults. I'm willing to work on our marriage if you are." Christina read the message twice, anger rising in her throat. After everything she'd heard, he still thought he could manage the situation, and her, with carefully crafted words. She turned the phone face down without responding, and finally drifted into a fitful sleep. Morning arrived with cruel brightness. Christina awoke disoriented, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then reality crashed back. She had left her husband yesterday. She was sleeping in her friend's guest room. Her marriage was over. She went through her morning routine on autopilot, grateful for the emergency overnight bag she kept in her car for school trips. Brianna, already dressed for her job at a downtown marketing firm, pushed a travel mug of coffee and a bagel into her hands. "Eat something, even if you're not hungry," she instructed, "and call me if you need anything. Absolutely anything." Christina managed a weak smile. "I'll be fine. 4th graders don't care about your personal drama. They just want to know if we're still having the tadpole observation today. Which is exactly why you're amazing at your job," Brianna said firmly. "Adam never appreciated what you bring to those kids' lives." The mention of his name sent a fresh wave of pain through Christina's chest, but she pushed it aside. She had 28 students counting on her today. Her personal crisis would have to wait. Arriving at Westridge Elementary, Christina was grateful for the familiar routine. Morning greeting in the hallway. Attendance. Morning announcements. The rhythm of the school day offered a structure her emotional state desperately needed. "Mrs. Wheeler, you look different today," observed Lily Martinez, a perceptive child with serious eyes. Christina forced a smile. "Do I? Maybe it's my new lipstick." "No," Lily said thoughtfully. "You look sad in your eyes." Children's honesty could be brutally accurate. Christina knelt to Lily's level. "Sometimes grown-ups have hard days too, just like kids, but I'm still happy to be here with all of you." The day proceeded with merciful normalcy. The children's enthusiasm for the Tadpole Project providing welcome distraction. It wasn't until her planning period that reality intruded again, in the form of 3 missed calls from Adam and a text from an unknown number. "This is Jessica Miller from Wheeler's firm. He's worried sick about you. Please call him." The audacity of it, Adam using his mistress as an intermediary, sent a surge of fresh anger through Christina. She blocked the number immediately, her hand shaking with rage. When school ended, Christina found herself reluctant to return to Brianna's apartment. She wasn't ready to sit with her thoughts yet. to fully process the implosion of her marriage. Instead, she drove to Riverside Park, a quiet spot along the water where she and Adam had once picnicked during their early dating days. It seemed important somehow to reclaim places that held memories of him. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass as Christina found a bench overlooking the water. Couples strolled hand in hand along the path, elderly men played chess at stone tables, and a group of college students tossed a frisbee nearby. Life continuing in all its mundane beauty, while her world had shattered. "Mrs. Wheeler?" The male voice startled her. Christina looked up to see Wesley Harlow, one of the men who had been drinking with Adam yesterday. He stood awkwardly before her bench, his tall frame blocking the sun, dressed in running clothes rather than yesterday's expensive suit. Christina tensed. "Did Adam send you to find me?" Wesley shook his head, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "No, I run here most evenings. Saw you sitting alone and thought I should apologize for yesterday." "Apologize?" Christina repeated, skepticism evident in her voice. He gestured to the bench. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, she nodded, shifting to create distance between them. Wesley sat, staring out at the water rather than meeting her eyes. "What you overheard yesterday was inexcusable. I should have shut that conversation down immediately." "But you didn't," Christina observed flatly. "No," he agreed, his southern accent more pronounced now. "I didn't, and I've been feeling like garbage about it ever since." They sat in silence for a moment, watching a pair of ducks glide across the water's surface. "Adam called me this morning," Wesley finally continued. "He's in damage control mode, trying to get ahead of this. Asked me to back him up if anyone at the firm starts asking questions." Christina's stomach clenched. "And will you back him up?" Wesley turned to face her directly, his expression serious. "That's why I wanted to talk to you. Adam hasn't just been talking about leaving you. He's been actively preparing for it." "I heard that part," Christina said, the words still bitter in her mouth. "No, it's more calculated than you know." Wesley ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely troubled. "He's been moving money to accounts you can't access, setting up his narrative at the firm that you're unstable, difficult to please. He even has a private investigator documenting your movements." "A private investigator?" Christina felt her blood run cold. "That's ridiculous. I'm a fourth-grade teacher. My most scandalous activity is staying late to prepare science projects." "It's not about catching you doing anything wrong," Wesley explained. "It's about building a case that benefits him financially in the divorce. Adam plays to win, always. Seats." The calculated cruelty of it struck Christina like a physical blow. This wasn't just Adam growing apart from her or falling for someone else. This was methodical destruction. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, studying Wesley's face for signs of deception. "You're his friend, not mine." Wesley looked away, discomfort evident in the set of his shoulders. "We're not really friends, colleagues who occasionally grab drinks. And I have a sister who went through something similar with her ex-husband. By the time she realized what was happening, he'd taken everything." He met Christina's gaze directly. "I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent while it happened to someone else." Christina absorbed this information, recalibrating her understanding of the danger she was facing. "What should I do?" "Get a good lawyer. Today, not tomorrow," Wesley advised. "Someone who specializes in high-conflict divorces. And document everything, every text, every call, every suspicious financial activity you can remember." He stood, clearly eager to end this uncomfortable encounter. "I should go. Adam can't know I spoke to you." "Thank you," Christina said quietly. "You didn't have to do this." Wesley nodded once. "Yes, I did." He turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Check your joint credit card statements. Adam's been making some significant purchases lately that I don't think were household expenses." As he jogged away, Christina remained on the bench, mind racing with this new information. The hurt of Adam's betrayal was now compounded by fear. She wasn't just dealing with a failing marriage, She was up against an adversary who had been strategizing her downfall for months. Her phone buzzed with a text from Brianna. "Coming home soon? Made your favorite pasta?" The simple kindness brought tears to Christina's eyes. She typed back a quick affirmative response, then opened her browser and searched. Best divorce attorneys in the city. The list of results was overwhelming, but one name appeared repeatedly in the top-rated reviews. Marlene Everett, described as relentless, strategic, and the attorney you want when facing a difficult divorce. Christina made an appointment for the following afternoon, then drove back to Brianna's apartment with a strange mix of dread and determination building in her chest. "You need to eat something substantial," Brianna insisted when Christina picked at her pasta that evening. "Heartbreak is physically demanding. You need fuel." "It's not just heartbreak anymore," Christina replied, recounting her conversation with Wesley in the park. "Adam has been planning this for months, Bri. He's been building a case against me while pretending everything was normal." Brianna's expression darkened. "That manipulative bastard. I never trusted him, even back in law school." "You didn't?" This was news to Christina. "You never said anything." "What was I supposed to say? Hey, your husband gives me creepy vibes?" Brianna sighed. "Besides, you seemed happy. Or at least I thought you were." Had she been happy? Christina tried to remember. The early years had certainly held joy. Weekend getaways, ambitious plans for the future, the simple pleasure of building a life together. But gradually, invisibly, those pleasures had been replaced by Adam's increasing demands and subtle criticisms. His dissatisfaction had become the center of their relationship, with Christina constantly adjusting herself to manage his moods and expectations. "I don't think I've been happy for a long time," she admitted quietly. "I just got really good at pretending." Brianna reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "Well, no more pretending. From now on, we focus on what actually makes you happy." After dinner, Christina forced herself to review their financial situation. The task was daunting. Adam had always managed their money, claiming his legal background made him better equipped for it. She had access to their joint checking account, but little else. Now she understood why. He had been compartmentalizing their finances in preparation for leaving her. Following Wesley's suggestion, she pulled up their credit card statements. What she found made her blood boil. Charges for expensive restaurants she'd never been to, a hotel booking in the Hamptons on a weekend Adam had claimed to be at a legal conference, and most damning of all, a $4,000 charge from a high-end jewelry store just 3 weeks ago. "He bought her jewelry," Christina said numbly, showing the statement to Brianna, "while we were still taking vacations together and discussing renovating the kitchen." Brianna's expression was thunderous. "Print everything. Screenshot everything. Forward it all to your email. He's not getting away with this." Christina worked late into the night, compiling financial records and documenting the timeline of Adam's apparent deception. The process was exhausting, but clarifying. By organizing the evidence of his betrayal, she was regaining some sense of control. Before going to bed, she drafted an email to her school principal requesting 2 personal days. She would need time for her appointment with the attorney and to begin untangling the logistical nightmare of separating her life from Adam's. As she finally lay down to sleep, Christina's phone lit up with a notification. An email from Adam, the subject line reading simply, "We need to talk." Her finger hovered over the delete button, but professional curiosity won out. The message was brief and to the point. "Christina, your behavior is becoming concerning. Refusing to communicate, involving my colleagues in our private matters, making decisions while emotional. This isn't like you. I've spoken with Dr. Patterson about your recent stress levels, and he agrees you might need some support. Please come home so we can address this together before things escalate further." Christina stared at the screen in disbelief. Adam was already spinning his narrative, painting her as emotionally unstable and himself as the concerned husband. And Dr. Patterson, their family physician whom Adam played golf with monthly, was apparently being enlisted in this gaslighting campaign. She forwarded the email to her own personal account, adding it to her growing file of evidence, then turned off her phone entirely. Adam's psychological warfare would have to wait until morning. Tonight, she needed rest before meeting the attorney who might become her strongest ally in the battle ahead. Sleep came fitfully, punctuated by dreams where she was searching for important documents in an endlessly expanding house, while Adam watched from doorways, always just out of reach. She woke at dawn feeling exhausted, but resolute. The morning brought a new complication. 3 voicemails from the school's administrative assistant. Apparently, Adam had called claiming a family emergency and insisting that Christina wasn't well enough to work. The concerned assistant wanted to know if Christina needed help and whether they should arrange for a substitute teacher for longer than the 2 days she had requested. "He's trying to undermine my job now," Christina told Brianna over hasty coffee, "making me sound unstable to my employers." "Classic abuser tactic," Brianna replied grimly. "Isolate the victim from their support systems. Thank God you're seeing Marlene Everett today." The law offices of Everett and Associates occupied half a floor in a gleaming downtown building. The reception area was tastefully appointed in shades of gray and blue, designed to convey both affluence and seriousness. Christina, dressed in her most professional navy dress, felt acutely aware that everyone else in the waiting area wore clothes that probably cost more than her monthly salary. "Mrs. Wheeler," a sleek assistant appeared. "Dr. Everett will see you now." The attorney rose from behind an imposing desk when Christina entered. Marlene Everett was a tall, elegant black woman in her mid-40s, with close-cropped silver hair and penetrating dark eyes. She wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and a single strand of pearls. "Christina," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for coming in. Please, have a seat and tell me what brings you here today." For the next 40 minutes, Christina outlined the situation, the overheard conversation, Wesley's warnings, the financial discoveries, and Adam's apparent campaign to paint her as unstable. Marlene listened intently, occasionally making notes on a leather-bound pad, but mostly maintaining unwavering eye contact. When Christina finished, Marlene leaned forward slightly. "First, let me say how sorry I am that you're going through this. What your husband is attempting is not just hurtful, it's potentially illegal, particularly the hidden financial maneuvers." "Can we prove it?" Christina asked. "With the right financial forensics? Yes." Marlene's voice was confident. "But we need to move quickly. Based on what you've told me, Adam has been preparing for this divorce for months. We're playing catch-up." "I don't have much money," Christina admitted. "Our savings are in accounts I can't access." Marlene nodded understandingly. "We can address the financial aspects immediately with an emergency motion. But first, I need to ask, are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with divorce? Once we file, there's no going back to how things were." The question gave Christina pause. Despite everything, was there a part of her that still wanted to salvage the marriage? She thought of Adam's dismissive words to his colleagues, of the jewelry purchase, of his immediate attempts to undermine her mental stability when his plans were discovered. "I'm certain," she said firmly. "The marriage I thought I had doesn't exist. Maybe it never did." "Then here's what we're going to do," Marlene said. "All business now. Today, we'll file for divorce and request emergency temporary orders to prevent Adam from hiding or disposing of marital assets. We'll also seek temporary spousal support so you're not financially stranded during proceedings." The reality of it, actually filing for divorce, made Christina's heart race. "How quickly will this happen?" "I can have the paperwork filed by end of day," Marlene replied. "Adam will be served, likely tomorrow. Once that happens, be prepared. He will not be happy." "He's already unhappy," Christina said with a bitter smile. "At least now I won't be pretending not to notice." As she left the attorney's office an hour later, having signed the preliminary paperwork to end her marriage, Christina felt a complex mixture of emotions: grief for what was lost, fear of the conflict ahead, but also, unexpectedly, a flicker of something that felt like freedom. Her phone, which she had turned back on for the appointment, immediately began buzzing with notifications. 3 missed calls from Adam, 2 from numbers she didn't recognize, and a text from the school principal asking if she was all right. Christina responded to the principal first, assuring her that she was fine but dealing with an unexpected personal matter. Then, against her better judgment, she listened to Adam's latest voicemail. "Christina, this has gone far enough." His voice was tight with controlled anger. "You're embarrassing both of us with this dramatic exit. I've explained to everyone that you've been under tremendous stress lately, so your reputation at the firm is intact, but you need to come home now before you do something we'll both regret. Call me back immediately." She deleted the message, a cold clarity settling over her. The man she had married, the man she had loved and supported for 7 years, was now her adversary in what promised to be a bitter legal battle. But for the first time since overhearing his cruel assessment of their marriage, Christina felt something unexpected stirring inside her: determination. Adam had underestimated her, dismissed her as beneath him. Now he would learn exactly how mistaken he had been. Walking back to her car in the crisp autumn air, Christina straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with legal complexities and emotional landmines, but she would navigate it with dignity and strength, not for Adam's benefit, but for her own, because despite what he believed, she was not beneath him. She never had been. "He's been served," Marlene Everett announced over the phone 3 days later. "And as expected, he's not taking it well." Christina clutched her cell phone tighter, pacing the length of Brianna's living room. "What did he do?" "Called my office and demanded to speak with me directly. When my assistant explained that would be inappropriate given that I represent you, he became colorful with his language." There was a hint of dry amusement in Marlene's voice. "More importantly, he's retained counsel, Gregory Blackwell." "Is that bad?" Christina asked, anxiety tightening her chest. "Blackwell is aggressive, but predictable. We've faced each other many times." Marlene's confidence was reassuring. "What matters now is that we've secured the temporary orders. As of this morning, Adam cannot legally dispose of marital assets or cut off your access to joint funds." The small victory provided momentary relief. Christina had been subsisting on her personal savings, the modest emergency fund she'd maintained in her own name, despite Adam's insistence that it was financially inefficient. "What happens next?" she asked, watching raindrops race down Brianna's apartment window. "Adam has 21 days to respond to the petition. In the meantime, prepare yourself for escalation. Men like your husband don't respond well to losing control." Marlene's warning proved prophetic. That evening, Christina's phone exploded with notifications as Adam launched his counteroffensive. First came the text messages, dozens within minutes, alternating between anger, "How dare you ambush me with legal papers at my firm," and manipulation, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" When she didn't respond, the tactics shifted. Mutual friends began calling, concerned about alarming messages from Adam claiming Christina was having some kind of breakdown. Her mother-in-law, with whom she'd always had a strained relationship, left a tearful voicemail begging her to stop this madness before it destroys everyone. "He's trying to isolate you," Brianna observed, as Christina silenced another call. Classic abuser playbook. "Adam's not abusive," Christina protested automatically, then paused, reconsidering. Perhaps there hadn't been physical violence or even overt verbal cruelty, but the constant undermining, the secret planning, the current campaign to paint her as unstable. Weren't these forms of abuse too? "Emotional manipulation is still abuse," Brianna said gently, seeming to read her thoughts. "And financial control is a recognized form of domestic violence." The words landed heavily. Christina had never applied such terms to her marriage, but the evidence was becoming difficult to deny. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. Adam again, but this time with a different approach. Christina, I've been doing some serious reflection. I spoke carelessly to colleagues after a difficult day, and you deserved better. While your reaction was extreme, I understand you were hurt. I'm willing to consider couples counseling if you'll come home and work on our marriage like adults. We've built 7 years together. Don't throw that away over one bad moment. The email was perfectly crafted to hit her vulnerabilities, her dedication to their marriage, her belief in working through problems, her fear of being seen as irrational. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was she overreacting? Should she at least hear him out? Then she remembered the jewelry purchase for Jessica, the private investigator, the methodical financial maneuvering. This wasn't about one bad moment. This was about years of calculated deception. She forwarded the email to Marlene without responding to Adam. The following week brought new challenges. Returning to her classroom provided structure, but also complications. Adam had sent flowers to the school office, an ostentatious arrangement with a card reading, "To my wife, I miss us," that ensured maximum gossip among her colleagues. He'd also apparently contacted her principal directly, expressing concerns about Christina's emotional state and suggesting she might need a leave of absence. "He's trying to undermine my professional stability now," Christina told Marlene during their next meeting. "Document everything," the attorney advised. "Each contact attempt, every end run around you to colleagues or family. It establishes a pattern of harassment." The documentation file grew steadily. Adam's initial shock at being served divorce papers had evolved into a methodical campaign. He'd canceled their joint credit cards without warning. When that failed to provoke her response, he'd removed her from their cell phone family plan. The latest salvo had been changing the locks on their house, technically illegal under the temporary orders, but a clear message nonetheless. Through it all, Christina maintained her silence, communicating only through Marlene. Each provocation strengthened her resolve rather than weakening it. The man she'd married was revealing his true character, and it was nothing like the partner she'd thought she had. "We need to discuss settlement negotiations," Marlene said during their third meeting. "Adam's attorney has made an initial offer. The terms were insulting: a small lump sum payment, no ongoing support, and Christina assuming responsibility for her own legal fees, which were already substantial and growing. He's testing your resolve," Marlene explained, "seeing if financial pressure will force you to cave quickly." "What do you recommend?" Christina asked. "Counteroffer aggressively. We know from the financial discovery that Adam has been hiding assets. His careful planning works against him now. It establishes intent to deceive." Christina nodded, a new steeliness in her expression. "Then let's proceed. I won't be bullied into accepting less than I'm entitled to." Titan. As the legal process unfolded, Christina faced another challenge, reclaiming her personal belongings from the house. Despite court orders granting her access, Adam had been unavailable for scheduled retrievals 3 times running. "This is harassment," Brianna fumed after the latest cancellation. "He's enjoying making you jump through hoops." "It's also strategic," Christina realized. "My teaching materials and research for my master's thesis are there. Without them, I'm professionally handicapped." The court finally appointed a neutral third party to supervise Christina's access to the house. When the day arrived, she steeled herself for the emotional impact of returning to the home she'd shared with Adam. The house looked eerily unchanged from the outside. The same manicured lawn, the same brass knocker on the front door. But stepping inside felt like entering a museum dedicated to a life that no longer existed. Adam had clearly hired a cleaning service. The house was immaculate in a way it never had been during their marriage. The refrigerator magnets Christina had collected from various trips were gone. So were the family photos from the entryway table. The house had been sanitized of her presence, as if preparing for its next occupant. While the court appointee watched, Christina methodically packed her remaining clothes, books, and personal items. In the home office, she found her teaching materials neatly boxed. Adam's way of communicating, they'd been unnecessary clutter to him. Her thesis research was similarly contained, though she noted with fury that several crucial notebooks were missing. "Is there a problem?" the appointee asked, noting her distress. "Some of my research materials aren't here," Christina replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "They should be on this shelf." The woman made a note. "We'll include that in the report to the court." In the master bedroom, Christina found most of her jewelry missing as well. Pieces inherited from her grandmother, gifts from friends over the years. When she opened the closet, she understood why. Adam had apparently hired a personal shopper. New women's clothes with designer labels still attached hung where Christina's teaching wardrobe had been. "He's already replaced me," she said quietly, more to herself than the appointee. Completely and literally. The realization should have devastated her. Instead, it hardened her resolve. The man methodically erasing her from this house while fighting to pay her as little as possible in the divorce. This was who Adam truly was. The mask had fallen completely. Loading the last of her possessions into Brianna's car, Christina looked back at the colonial house that had never truly felt like home. Adam was clearly preparing it for his next chapter with Jessica, or perhaps another suitable candidate for the role of corporate lawyer's wife. The thought no longer hurt as acutely as it once might have. "Are you okay?" Brianna asked as they drove away. Christina considered the question carefully. "Not yet," she answered honestly, "but I will be." That night, sorting through the boxes from her former home, Christina found a small leather-bound journal tucked among her teaching supplies. She recognized it immediately. The gratitude journal Brianna had given her 3 years ago, which she'd dutifully maintained for months before Adam dismissed it as self-help nonsense. She'd hidden it rather than discarding it, making entries sporadically when Adam worked late. Opening it now, Christina was struck by the entries. Small joys and hopes recorded in her own handwriting, a chronicle of the person she'd been before Adam's constant criticism had diminished her. Classroom breakthroughs with struggling students, a particularly beautiful sunset, plans for travel, and further education that she'd gradually abandoned as Adam's career took precedence. "I'd forgotten who I was," she murmured, tracing the words on the page. The journal became her evening ritual, not just recording new gratitudes, but reading her past entries, reconnecting with the woman who had dreams beyond supporting Adam's ambitions. That woman wasn't gone, Christina realized. She had merely been dormant, waiting for the opportunity to emerge. 6 weeks into the divorce proceedings, an unexpected development shifted the landscape. Wesley Harlow requested a meeting with Christina and Marlene, claiming to have information relevant to the case. "I don't trust this," Marlene cautioned. "He's still Adam's colleague." "But he warned me about Adam's planning," Christina reminded her. "Without that warning, I might have been blindsided." They agreed to meet Wesley at Marlene's office, with the attorney present throughout. The man who arrived looked markedly different from the confident lawyer Christina had encountered in the park. He was visibly nervous, his southern charm replaced by evident discomfort. "Thank you for seeing me," he began, declining coffee. "What I'm about to share could cost me my job, but I can't stay silent any longer." He placed a USB drive on Marlene's desk. "What's this?" the attorney asked, making no move to touch it. "Emails," Wesley replied, "between Adam and several partners at the firm, discussing how to hide assets during his divorce. Also, communications with a private investigator he hired to follow Christina. And," he hesitated, "evidence of his relationship with Jessica Miller, going back nearly 18 months. Christina felt the room tilt slightly. 18 months. Her husband had been unfaithful for over a year, while she'd been trying desperately to save their increasingly cold marriage. "Why are you doing this?" Marlene asked, her tone suspicious. Wesley looked directly at Christina. "Because what Adam's doing isn't just unethical. It's illegal. And because," he hesitated, My sister killed herself after her ex-husband destroyed her in their divorce. I can't watch it happen to someone else. The raw confession hung in the air for a moment. Christina found herself believing him, despite her attorney's skepticism. Marlene carefully placed the USB drive in an envelope. We'll need to authenticate this material, and you may be called to testify about its provenance. Wesley nodded grimly. I understand. I've already started looking for another position. Once Adam realizes I've done this, my days at the firm are numbered. As he rose to leave, Christina spoke. Thank you. Whatever your reasons, thank you. See, he nodded once before departing, his posture suggesting a man who had just jumped from a great height, unsure whether he would fly or fall. The evidence proved damning. Adam had not only been hiding assets, but conspiring with senior partners to do so, a serious ethical violation that could potentially impact their legal licenses. The private investigators' reports were equally revealing, documenting Christina's utterly mundane life with timestamps and photographs that made her skin crawl. Most painful were the emails between Adam and Jessica, dating back to when Christina had still believed they were working on their marriage. The casual cruelty with which he discussed his wife, the detailed plans for their future together after he extracted himself from this marriage mistake, it was all laid bare in clinical detail. This changes everything, Marlene said, reviewing the evidence. We now have significant leverage. That night, curled on Brianna's couch with a cup of tea, Christina reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. 6 weeks ago, she had been a wife trying to navigate an increasingly distant marriage. Now she was in the middle of a high-conflict divorce, with evidence that could potentially damage her husband's career. What are you thinking? Brianna asked, joining her with her own mug. Christina considered the question carefully. I'm thinking that I don't recognize my life anymore. But maybe that's not entirely bad. The conference room at Marlene's law firm had the sterile, tense atmosphere of a surgical theater. Christina sat beside her attorney, back straight, hands folded on the polished mahogany table. Across from them, Adam and his lawyer, Gregory Blackwell, a hawk-faced man with calculating eyes, maintained equally rigid postures. This was their first face-to-face meeting since the separation, a settlement conference requested by Adam's side after Marlene had presented the evidence from Wesley. Christina had prepared herself for this moment, rehearsing her composure in front of Brianna's bathroom mirror. Still, the reality of seeing Adam, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that she recognized as new, his wedding ring conspicuously absent, sent an unexpected jolt through her system. He looked unchanged. While her world had been upended, he appeared exactly as he always had, confident, slightly impatient, with that familiar furrow between his brows that appeared whenever he faced an obstacle to his plans. Only the tightness around his mouth betrayed any tension. Let's get straight to the point, Blackwell began without preamble. My client is prepared to be generous in the interest of resolving this matter efficiently. Marlene's slight smile held no warmth. We're certainly interested in efficiency, counselor. However, our understanding of generous may differ from yours, particularly in light of recent evidence. The reference to Wesley's documents hung in the air like smoke. Adam's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only indication that the comment had landed. For the next 2 hours, Christina watched the attorneys spar over asset division, spousal support, and the house. The legal terminology washed over her in waves, but she caught the essential points. Adam was offering significantly more than his initial proposal, though still less than what Marlene believed Christina was entitled to. Throughout the negotiations, Adam's gaze occasionally flickered toward Christina. She met his eyes steadily each time, refusing to look away first. This small act of defiance seemed to unnerve him more than Marlene's legal maneuvers. During a brief recess, Christina stepped into the hallway for water. She was studying the cityscape through the corridor windows when Adam appeared beside her, having evidently followed her out. Christina! Her name in his voice, once so familiar, now oddly distant, sent a shiver down her spine. She turned slowly. "You need to tell your attorney to be realistic," he said, voice low. "This vindictive approach isn't like you. You don't know what's like me anymore, Adam." Her voice was steady, surprising her. "Maybe you never did." His expression hardened. 7 years of marriage, and suddenly I'm a stranger because of one overheard conversation? You're better than this melodrama. Christina felt a calm clarity descend over her. It wasn't just a conversation. It was a revelation. You've been unfaithful for over a year. You hired someone to follow me. You've been hiding money and planning your exit strategy while pretending everything was normal. Pete, she shook her head. The conversation just gave me the gift of truth. Adam glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with her straightforward recitation of his actions. That USB drive won't hold up in court. Harlow obtained those files illegally, and he'll be finished in this town when I'm done with him. Is that a threat? Christina asked, maintaining her composure. Because threatening a potential witness isn't a great strategy. This isn't you talking, Adam insisted, frustration breaking through his controlled facade. This is Marlene Everett and your friend Brianna filling your head with feminist revenge fantasies. The Christina I married was reasonable. The Christina you married was afraid of losing you, she corrected him. She's gone now. I suggest you adjust your expectations accordingly. Before he could respond, Marlene appeared in the hallway. Christina, we're ready to resume. With a final steady look at her husband, Christina turned and walked away, aware of his eyes boring into her back, but no longer concerned with his judgment. The settlement conference ended without resolution, though the parameters had shifted significantly in Christina's favor. As they gathered their materials, Marlene leaned close. He's worried, she murmured. That's good for us. Outside the law firm, autumn had painted the city in amber and crimson. Christina inhaled deeply, feeling as though she'd been underwater during the meeting and could finally breathe again. Are you all right? Marlene asked, as they walked toward the parking garage. Christina considered the question. Yes, she said, somewhat surprised to find it true. Seeing him was harder than I expected, but also clarifying. How so? I realized I don't miss him, Christina said simply. I miss the security of the life I thought I had, but not the man himself. Marlene nodded approvingly. That's an important distinction. Hold on to it in the difficult days ahead. Those difficult days materialized quickly. Adam's next move was to challenge Christina's temporary occupancy of Brianna's apartment, claiming it was an unstable living arrangement that demonstrated her erratic decision-making. When that failed, he attempted to freeze additional joint accounts that had been uncovered during discovery. He's getting desperate, Marlene observed after a particularly contentious phone call with Blackwell. That's when opponents make mistakes. The predicted mistake came a week later. Adam, apparently convinced the evidence from Wesley wouldn't be admissible, filed a formal complaint with Christina's school district alleging unprofessional conduct. The complaint was vague but troubling, suggesting Christina had been emotionally volatile with students and inappropriately sharing personal problems in the classroom. He's trying to destroy my career now, Christina said numbly, holding the certified letter from the district's Human Resources Department. Brianna's expression was thunderous. That's crossing a line. The accusation required a formal response and triggered an administrative review. Christina spent hours compiling parent feedback, performance evaluations, and student work samples to demonstrate her continued professionalism despite personal challenges. Her principal, Ellen Dougherty, proved unexpectedly supportive. I've watched you teach for 5 years, Christina. Your classroom is a model of emotional safety and academic rigor. This complaint is transparently vindictive. With Ellen's backing, the administrative review concluded quickly, finding no evidence of unprofessional conduct. The district's response was unequivocal. Christina Wheeler was an exemplary educator whose personal circumstances had not affected her teaching performance. The victory was bittersweet. While her professional reputation remained intact, Adam's willingness to target her career revealed the depths of his vindictiveness. It also demonstrated how thoroughly he had underestimated her, a pattern that continued throughout the proceedings. "He doesn't believe you'll go through with the trial," Marlene explained after another failed settlement attempt. "He's convinced you'll crack under pressure." "Because the Christina he knew would have," she replied, understanding dawning. "He doesn't realize I'm not that person anymore." The divorce proceedings had indeed transformed her, though not in the way Adam predicted. Instead of crumbling, Christina had discovered reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Teaching during the day and building her case at night, she moved through each week with growing confidence in her capacity to face challenges. This newfound strength was tested when she received an unexpected email from Jessica Miller. Subject line, "We should talk." Christina's first instinct was to delete it unread, but curiosity prevailed. The message was brief. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but there are things you should know about Adam that might help your case. I'm not who you think I am in this situation. If you're willing to hear me out, I'll be at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 10 a.m. Christina forwarded the email to Marlene, who advised caution. "This could be a trap, Adam trying to get evidence that you're conspiring against him. If you go, take someone with you and meet in public." The following morning found Christina and Brianna at Riverside Cafe 15 minutes early, securing a table with clear sightlines to all entrances. When Jessica appeared precisely at 10, Christina was struck by how different she looked from her mental image. Instead of the predatory homewrecker she'd imagined, Jessica appeared nervous, younger than Christina had remembered, and conspicuously lacking the confidence she'd displayed at firm events. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the seat across from Christina. Her gaze flickered uncertainly to Brianna. "This is my friend Brianna," Christina said firmly. "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of her." Jessica nodded, fidgeting with a paper napkin. "I'll get straight to the point. Adam and I were involved, but it's over. It's been over for months." Christina maintained a neutral expression, waiting. "He ended things when you filed for divorce," Jessica continued. "Said I was a complication he couldn't afford during legal proceedings." Her laugh held no humor. "He promised we'd be together once everything was settled. But last week, I found out he's been seeing Veronica from tax law since September." "So this is about revenge," Christina surmised, disappointment settling in her chest. She'd hoped for something more substantive. "No," Jessica shook her head emphatically. "This is about warning you. Adam isn't just fighting for money or pride. He's obsessed with his image at the firm. The divorce, especially with Wesley's evidence, threatens that image." "I'm aware," Christina replied coolly. "No, you don't understand." Jessica leaned forward, voice dropping. "He's planning to use information from the private investigator to paint you as mentally unstable at trial. Out-of-context photos, manipulated timestamps, selective text messages. He's been compiling a narrative for months." Christina felt Brianna tense beside her, but maintained her composure. "Why are you telling me this?" Jessica hesitated. "Because I've seen how he operates up close now. What he did to me, he's done before. With associates, with clients, with you. He builds people up, uses them, then discards them when they're no longer valuable." She met Christina's eyes directly. "And because I found his playbook." From her bag, Jessica withdrew a leather-bound notebook. "Adam keeps meticulous notes, case strategies, personal strategies, everything. I took this from his apartment last time I was there." She slid it across the table. "Pages 27 through 42 detail his divorce strategy, including plans to discredit you professionally and personally." Christina stared at the notebook, recognizing Adam's precise handwriting on the visible page. "This is evidence tampering," she said quietly. "Taking this could undermine its admissibility." "I know," Jessica replied. "I'm an attorney too. But I also know Adam will destroy the original once it's served its purpose. This might be your only chance to see what you're really up against." After Jessica left, Brianna examined the notebook skeptically. "Can we trust her?" I don't know, Christina admitted, but we can verify the contents. She photographed several pages with her phone, then placed the notebook in her bag. Marlene needs to see this. The attorney's reaction was measured but concerned. This complicates things, she said after reviewing the photographs. If Jessica took this without authorization, it could be problematic as evidence. However, now that we know Adam's strategy, we can prepare, Christina finished. The notebook revealed Adam's thinking with disturbing clarity. Pages of meticulous notes detailed Christina's weaknesses to exploit, her concerns about her teaching salary, her previous bout with anxiety during her mother's illness, her desire for children that Adam had repeatedly delayed. He'd compiled a list of mutual friends to turn against her, complete with specific approaches tailored to each relationship. Most disturbing was a section titled Narrative Construction, outlining how to reframe their entire marriage as Adam supporting an emotionally fragile woman who ultimately couldn't handle his success. He really believes this, Christina said quietly, turning the final page. In his mind, I'm the villain in this story. Men like Adam can't conceive of themselves as anything but the hero, Marlene observed. It's not personal. It's pathological. The discovery of Adam's playbook shifted Christina's perspective. This wasn't just about financial settlements or wounded pride anymore. It was about reclaiming her narrative from someone who had been systematically distorting it for years. That evening, she began writing her own account of their marriage, not for the court, but for herself. The process was painful but clarifying, forcing her to confront patterns she'd normalized. Adam's subtle undermining of her career ambitions, his gradual isolation of her from friends who weren't good enough, his rewriting of conflicts to make her seem irrational or oversensitive. I didn't see it, she told Brianna later, the completed document saved on her laptop. All those little moments where he chipped away at my confidence, my independence. How did I miss it? Because it happened gradually, Brianna replied gently. And because you loved him. We don't scrutinize the people we trust. As the trial date approached, Christina found herself oddly calm. The woman who had stood frozen outside her own home, devastated by her husband's betrayal, had been transformed through the crucible of the past months. She had survived Adam's worst attempts to discredit her. She had rebuilt her financial independence with Marlene's help, securing access to joint assets that provided stability while the divorce proceeded. Most importantly, she had reclaimed her sense of self, not as Adam Wheeler's wife, but as Christina Wheeler, educator and survivor. The courthouse loomed before Christina like a modern fortress, all glass, steel, and imposing angles. She paused at the base of the wide stone steps, drawing a deep breath of crisp morning air. Today would determine the final chapter of her marriage to Adam, closing a book she had once believed would be the story of her entire life. Ready? Marlene asked, elegant as always in a tailored navy suit, leather portfolio tucked under one arm. Christina nodded, smoothing the lapel of her own suit, a deep emerald that matched her eyes, purchased with her first independent paycheck after securing temporary spousal support. As ready as I'll ever be. The courtroom was smaller than she'd imagined, more intimate and thus somehow more intimidating. Adam was already seated at the respondent's table, his posture radiating the controlled confidence that had once impressed her. Now she recognized it for what it was, a performance, as calculated as everything else about him. Their eyes met briefly as she walked to her seat. His expression remained neutral, but she caught the flicker of surprise in his gaze, perhaps at her composure, or the quiet dignity with which she carried herself. The woman before him was not the devastated, tearful wife who had fled their home 4 months ago. Judge Eleanor Ramsey entered the courtroom, a distinguished woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate everything and everyone with equal scrutiny. As the proceedings began, Christina forced herself to focus on Marlene's measured voice outlining their case, rather than on Adam's profile in her peripheral vision. The first hours passed in a blur of legal terminology and procedural exchanges. It wasn't until Adam took the stand that Christina's attention sharpened to laser focus. "Mr. Wheeler," Blackwell began, "could you describe the nature of your marriage prior to separation?" Adam straightened his already perfect tie. "It was a partnership. I supported Christina's teaching career, despite the financial limitations it placed on us. I encouraged her professional development. I believed we were building a life together, until her sudden departure." The careful construction of his testimony was masterful, technically truthful, yet fundamentally deceptive. Christina watched him weave reality into a narrative that cast him as the bewildered, supportive husband blindsided by an emotionally unstable wife. "And the allegations regarding your relationship with Jessica Miller?" Blackwell prompted. Adam's expression conveyed perfect regret. "An error in judgment during a difficult period in our marriage. A mistake I immediately ended when I realized the damage it might cause. Christina and I were already in counseling, working through our issues, when she abruptly left." The blatant lie stoked a fire in Christina's chest. They had never attended counseling. Adam had dismissed the idea whenever she'd suggested it, calling it unnecessary drama. When Marlene rose for cross-examination, her approach was surgical. "Mr. Wheeler, you testified that you supported your wife's career. Could you elaborate on how specifically you did that?" Adam smiled confidently. "Of course. I encouraged her continuing education, provided financial stability so she could pursue teaching despite its modest compensation, attended school functions when my schedule allowed." Marlene nodded thoughtfully. "And when Mrs. Wheeler was offered a curriculum development position with a significant salary increase 2 years ago, requiring relocation to Boston, how did you demonstrate your support then?" A barely perceptible twitch appeared at the corner of Adam's mouth. "That position would have required sacrificing my partnership track at the firm. We discussed it as a couple and agreed it wasn't the right move for our family." "Did you?" Marlene consulted her notes. "I have here an email you sent to Mrs. Wheeler on March 3rd, 2022. Would you please read the highlighted portion?" Adam accepted the document, his expression tightening as he scanned the text. After a pause that stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable, he read, "Your insistence on discussing this Boston position is becoming tedious. We've built our life here, my career is here, and frankly, the opportunity isn't significant enough to warrant uprooting everything for your job satisfaction experiment." "Does that sound like a discussion between equal partners?" Marlene asked mildly. "That email was sent during a stressful period," Adam countered. "One message doesn't represent our entire relationship dynamic." "Perhaps not," Marlene agreed. "Let's examine another example of your supportive partnership." For the next 40 minutes, Marlene methodically deconstructed Adam's testimony, contrasting his claims with documentary evidence of his controlling behavior, financial manipulation, and deliberate undermining of Christina's independence. With each revelation, Adam's composed facade cracked further, revealing glimpses of the cold calculation beneath. When it was Christina's turn to testify, she approached the stand with steady steps. Looking out at the courtroom, she saw Brianna's encouraging smile in the gallery. Beyond her sat several colleagues from school, including Principal Dougherty. Their presence fortified her as she took the oath. "Mrs. Wheeler," Marlene began, "could you describe for the court when you first became aware that your marriage was in jeopardy?" Christina's voice emerged clear and unwavering. "I believed we were working through normal marital challenges until August 15th, when I returned home early from work and overheard my husband discussing plans to leave me with his colleagues. He described me as beneath him professionally and outlined a 6-month timeline for ending our marriage." "And prior to this incident, had you planned to leave the marriage?" "No," Christina said simply. "Despite our difficulties, I was committed to our relationship. I believed Adam was too." Through careful questioning, Marlene guided Christina through the narrative of their marriage. Not Adam's version, with its selective omissions and careful framing, but the lived reality, She described the gradual erosion of her independence, the constant adjustments to accommodate Adam's career, while her own ambitions were sidelined. The subtle criticism that had become so normalized, she'd stopped noticing it. When Blackwell rose for cross-examination, his approach was immediate and aggressive. "Mrs. Wheeler, you've painted quite a picture of victimhood today," he began. "Yet you maintained this supposedly controlling relationship for 7 years without complaint. Why should the court believe your characterization now, when it serves your financial interests?" Christina met his gaze steadily. "Because I'm no longer afraid of losing someone who never truly valued me. For years, I normalized behavior that shouldn't have been normal. I interpreted control as protection, dismissiveness as wisdom. I believed that was what marriage required. Constant compromise of myself. I was wrong. So you admit you're a different person now than the woman who entered this marriage?" Blackwell pressed. "How can my client be blamed for failing to satisfy someone who's fundamentally changed?" Christina considered her answer carefully. "I haven't changed fundamentally, Mr. Blackwell. I've simply remembered who I was before I started diminishing myself to accommodate your client's ego. The woman Adam married, the one who had dreams, opinions, and boundaries, was always there. She just got very quiet for a while." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. From the corner of her eye, Christina saw Adam shift uncomfortably in his seat. For the first time since the proceedings began, he looked genuinely unsettled. The trial continued with expert testimony from financial analysts detailing Adam's systematic movement of assets in anticipation of divorce. The evidence from Wesley Harlow proved particularly damaging, establishing a pattern of deliberate concealment that contradicted Adam's claims of transparency. During a brief recess, Christina stood in the courthouse hallway, rolling her shoulders to release the tension that had accumulated during hours of testimony. From the adjacent corridor, she heard Adam's voice, sharp with frustration, as he spoke to someone on his phone. "It's not going as expected," he was saying. "She's different. Coached, obviously. Everett has her performing like she's auditioning for a feminist manifesto. No, I still have leverage. The judge seems receptive to our stability argument. Once this is over and the dust settles, we can—" He stopped abruptly as he rounded the corner and saw Christina standing there. For a moment, they regarded each other in silence. Former partners, now adversaries, the intimacy of their shared life replaced by the formal distance of litigation. "You don't have to do this," Adam said finally, lowering his phone. "We could still settle. Walk away with dignity, rather than airing our private business to strangers." Christina studied his face, the familiar features that had once meant home and safety to her. "This isn't about dignity for you, Adam. It's about control. You thought I would crumble without you, that I'd accept whatever terms you offered rather than stand up for myself." A flash of the old arrogance crossed his expression. "And instead, you've turned this into a crusade. Was it worth it? Destroying both our reputations for your pound of flesh?" "My reputation is intact," Christina replied calmly. "My students still learn from me. My colleagues still respect me. The only thing I've lost is the illusion that I needed your approval to be valuable." Before he could respond, Marlene appeared, signaling that the recess was ending. As they returned to the courtroom, Christina felt an unexpected sense of peace washing over her. Regardless of the judge's decision, she had already reclaimed something precious: her voice, her truth, her sense of self-worth. The final day of trial brought closing arguments. Blackwell emphasized Adam's financial contributions to the marriage, his professional standing, and his willingness to provide reasonable support despite Christina's impulsive abandonment of the relationship. The performance was polished, but felt hollow, a technical exercise rather than a human truth. When Marlene rose to deliver her closing statement, her approach was markedly different. "Your Honor, at its core, this case isn't about financial spreadsheets or asset division, though those matters are certainly before the court. It's about a fundamental imbalance of power that Mr. Wheeler cultivated and exploited throughout this marriage. The evidence has shown a pattern of control, manipulation, and calculated deception spanning years, culminating in a meticulously planned exit strategy that prioritized Mr. Wheeler's interests while deliberately undermining Mrs. Wheeler's financial security and professional reputation. She moved from behind the table, her presence commanding the room's attention. Christina Wheeler did not leave her marriage on a whim or emotional impulse, as opposing counsel suggests. She left because she discovered that the partnership she believed in was, in fact, a carefully maintained illusion. She left because remaining would have required continuing to diminish herself to accommodate a partner who saw her as an asset rather than an equal. Judge Ramsey announced that she would issue her ruling within 10 days. As they gathered their materials to leave, Christina felt strangely light, as though a weight she had carried for years had finally been set down. "Whatever happens," she told Marlene quietly, "thank you for helping me find my voice again." Outside the courthouse, autumn was giving way to winter. The trees stood bare against a pearl-gray sky, and Christina's breath formed small clouds in the chilly air. Brianna waited at the bottom of the steps, offering a warm hug. "You were magnificent," her friend whispered. "Absolutely magnificent." The next 10 days passed in a curious limbo. Christina returned to her classroom, finding solace in the simple joys of teaching. A struggling student finally grasping a concept, the creative chaos of art projects, the unfiltered honesty of children. Her colleagues, aware of her situation, though not the details, formed a protective circle around her, offering quiet support without intrusion. On the 10th day, Marlene called, "The ruling is in. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" The attorney's expression revealed nothing as Christina settled into the chair across from her desk. Marlene opened a folder containing the judge's decision and slid it across to her. "Read it yourself," she said simply. Christina's hands trembled slightly as she lifted the document. The legal language was dense, but the conclusions were unmistakable. Judge Ramsey had ruled overwhelmingly in her favor, citing Adams' demonstrated pattern of financial deception and documented efforts to undermine the respondent professionally. The court ordered an equitable division of all marital assets, including those Adam had attempted to shield, plus spousal support for 3 years, to allow Christina to complete her master's degree. "We won," Christina whispered, looking up at Marlene. "Really won." "You won," Marlene corrected her, a rare smile warming her features. "I just provided the legal framework. You did the hard part, standing in your truth, when it would have been easier to surrender." That evening, Christina sat alone on the small balcony of her new apartment, a modest one-bedroom she had found 3 weeks earlier, using the unfrozen marital assets to secure the lease. The space was entirely hers, decorated according to her tastes, without Adam's minimalist aesthetic overruling her preference for color and texture. Her phone chimed with a message from Brianna. "Celebration dinner tomorrow? The whole support crew wants to toast your victory." Christina smiled, typing back her acceptance. Her support crew had expanded beyond Brianna to include colleagues, fellow teachers she'd reconnected with after years of allowing those friendships to fade, and even Marlene, whose professional reserve had gradually given way to genuine respect and something approaching friendship. Another message appeared, from Wesley Harlow. "Heard the news. Congratulations. Justice prevailed." Wesley had paid a professional price for his testimony, forced to resign from the firm after Adam's accusations of disloyalty. He had landed at a smaller practice across town, apparently happier away from the cutthroat atmosphere of corporate law. As twilight deepened into evening, Christina reflected on the journey of the past 4 months. The woman who had stood frozen outside her home, heart-shattering as she overheard her husband's cruel dismissal, seemed like a different person now, or rather, like an earlier version of herself that she had gradually lost during her marriage. She had survived Adam's worst efforts to discredit and diminish her. She had reclaimed not just her financial independence, but her sense of worth, independent of his validation. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. 7 years couldn't be erased without leaving scars, but it had transformed into something else. Wisdom, resilience, self-knowledge. Her phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. Christina hesitated, then answered. "Christina? It's Caleb Whitman from the literature department at City University." She recognized the name. He had been a guest speaker at an educational conference she'd attended last month, where they'd had a brief but engaging conversation about teaching methodologies. "I hope it's not too forward to call," he continued, his voice warm and slightly nervous. "But I'm organizing a workshop on creative writing for elementary educators next month, and I immediately thought of you. Your insights during our conversation were fascinating, and I'd love to have you participate. Maybe we could discuss it over coffee." Christina found herself smiling. A month ago, she might have declined automatically, the habit of making herself smaller still ingrained. Now she heard herself say, "I'd like that very much." After ending the call, Christina remained on the balcony, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new possibilities, new choices to make without reference to Adam's preferences or expectations. 6 months ago, Adam had sat in their living room and declared her beneath him, plotting her disposal like an outdated appliance. He had believed she would crumble without him, accepting whatever crumbs he deigned to offer in the divorce. He had been wrong. Christina Wheeler, teacher, survivor, woman reclaiming her story, tilted her face toward the emerging stars and felt something that had been absent for too long. Possibility, stretching before her like an open road. Whatever came next, she would face it standing firmly in her own truth, never again diminishing herself to accommodate someone else's narrative. As the night deepened around her, Christina made a silent promise to herself. From this day forward, she would never again forget her own worth. It had taken losing everything she thought she wanted to discover what she truly needed. Not a husband who saw her as an extension of himself, but the freedom to be fully, unapologetically herself. The stars above seemed to shimmer in response, witnesses to a quiet transformation more profound than any legal victory. Christina Wheeler had not just survived her divorce, she had reclaimed her life, and that was the greatest victory of all. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.